Okay, short round. Yeah, so that's my feeble attempt at an Indiana Jones impersonation. Um, in fact, that was very, very spontaneous. I was trying to think of a line to come up with. So it's been a while since I've done a film review, and it seems as good a time as any because the movie I'm going to review, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, is fresh in my mind. I watched it earlier in the cinema. Um, so As with all my film reviews, there will be spoilers in this. So if you don't want to know the spoilers, do stop watching now. Um, I have to be blunt. My initial sort of summary of this is semi disappointment. I feel there were missed opportunities, considering that this was meant to be the swan song of a much beloved franchise. I feel that there were missed opportunities. But I always try to be fair with these sort of reviews, and there were aspects of the film I enjoyed, but there were aspects I thought fell flat. Um, Now, as a child, I was big Indiana Jones fan to the point where my mum went around the charity shops of Belfast looking for a bullwhip and a fedora. So I grew up on it, and I've seen those movies many times. The first three, and even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Um, I'm going to very quickly run through the premise of this latest film, some of the characters, and just my thoughts on it. So the basic premise starts off in occupied Europe, 1944. Indiana Jones and his friend, played by Toby Jones, Professor Shaw, who I think is very similar to the Marcus Brody character of earlier films, um, are trying to retrieve the Lance of Longinus. This was the character who was thought to be the Roman centurion who spared Christ. And if you know the Indiana Jones series, there's a religious elements to a lot of the movies. The Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail. Um, but it's not about the Lance of Longinus, that's just a little subplot. Turned out to be a fake. So the Nazis were looting art and valuables, that is accurate to history. Um, I'll just say one quick thing in passing. It's a slightly cartoonish take on Nazis, It's very, very Hollywood, very black and white, the Nazis, the bad guys. And obviously, Nazis are bad guys, but I mean, there's a slightly cartoonish aspect to it, which I don't know. If you're looking for sort of depth to this film, it won't be there in that sense. Um, anyway, on the way to retrieve this Lance of Longinus, instead, Indy comes across something else, which is one half of a dial created by the Greek philosopher Archimedes. And I'm going to try and pronounce this correctly. The Archimedes dial, the Antikythera mechanism, which is supposedly got kind of magical properties. I don't know how you would describe it. Time vortex qualities. Indy is skeptical of this, but it drove his friend crazy. Basically, the plot then goes forward to 1969. I should say, in this scene, he encounters the main villain of the film, played by Mads Mikkelsen, um, who then ends up with Operation Paperclip, which was a kind of project to get Nazi scientists to work for America after the war. Um, Mads Mikkelsen's a decent villain. He's also one of the only two people I can think of, the other being Sean Connery, who has appeared in both the Bond and Indiana Jones universes. I might be wrong about that, but I think they're the only two actors who've been in both those worlds. Sean Connery, of course, played Indiana Jones's father in Last Crusade. Anyway, flash forward to 1969, we have a grumpy Dr. Jones. He wakes up, he's quite disheveled, and it's the day of the moon landing, July 69, which is coming up, the anniversary actually. And there's a big ticker tape parade in New York City for the returning Apollo 11 astronauts. All the students are interested in this, he's, not interested. Um, I've just read that apparently the New York City scenes were actually filmed in Glasgow. Um, and the bridge scene, the opening bridge scene, which is set in Switzerland, was actually filmed in North Yorkshire. Now, I knew that there had been some of this film filmed around the UK because Harrison Ford actually made an appearance in Gateshead in 2021. He was spotted, I guess, between breaks. And it's not every day a major Hollywood A-lister turns up on Tyneside, so that got some local attention. And I kind of thought there'd be some plot with Hadrian's Wall, which is a World Heritage Site not far from here. But anyway, that was what happened. Something similar had actually been done in Ready Player One, where Birmingham doubled up as Columbus, Ohio. So it's good to see the UK being utilized in big movies. Um, yeah, so basically, Indy is reunited with an estranged goddaughter who's, she took a degree in archaeology, um, but she turns out to have a rogue element side to her. And I'm going to come back to her. She's played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and I have to be honest, I did not warm to the character. I think it fell flat. I'll come back to that. But anyway, the CIA pursues him because they mistakenly believe he has committed murder, and they're pursuing this. I'm not going to get too much into the complexities of it, but the scenes in New York City are some of the best in the film. Very well done. I should say, incidentally, there was a CGI effect to de-age Harrison Ford. Very well done in that opening scene. So it was like the Harrison Ford of the 1980s. It was very well done, whatever technology was used. Specifically, that AI CGI was well done. Um, I thought maybe they would have got clips from the older films and kind of somehow splurged them together to make that, but no, apparently it was a CGI effect. Anyway, the New York City scenes, Harrison Ford, they show it in the trailer on the police horse going through the subway. That was very well done. I think better than the car chase in the Harvard scene or the Princeton scene of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I thought it was an impressive scene, well done, especially when it goes past, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. There's some beauty queens. There's anti-war demonstrators. It's a very impressive scene. It's one of the best parts of the film, actually. Unfortunately, it's quite near the start. Um, there's characters from the older film. Salah makes an appearance, played by John Rhys Davies. Um, and there's others. How can I put it? What like I want to rather than just going through the plot. Basically, the gist of this is Indy then ends up on this freeway chase. Him, his estranged goddaughter, and the Nazi scientist played by Mads Mikkelsen are all kind of pursuing this Dial of Destiny by Archimedes, created by Archimedes. Um, which is located in the ancient city of Syracuse, Italy. Um, but initially they go to Tangier. There's sort of a black market there. Now I'm going to talk a bit about Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, Helena. Helena. Forget the whole character's name. Let's just call her Helena. There is a bit of a consensus that that fell flat. Now Willie Scott was a diva, but she was funny. Um, Marion Ravenwood was tough but sassy. The thing about Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, and this is nothing personal against Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I don't know enough about her to say anything personal, but I just did not warm to the character. She was not funny. She was not, if it was an attempt at sassiness, it was just irritating. And she took up a lot of screen time. She was an important character, but a very irritating character. She just came across as obnoxious, not witty, not charming, just kind of obnoxious. Um, there were some feeble attempts to make her likable, like there was a diving scene where she sort of came back to save Indy, but to me, it just fell flat. This is supposed to be his estranged godchild, goddaughter. It just, it just fell flat. Then she had a little sidekick, a Moroccan street child, clearly a reference to Short Round. He was the Short Round of this film. But again, he lacked the charm of Short Round. He was okay, better than Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, but just neither of them clicked for me. Now, someone suggested what they really should have done with this is have had this as an Atlantis type film, and they should have brought back Jonathan Lee Kwan as Short Round. I don't know if he was consulted or not, but that would have been really a good closing to the Indiana Jones saga. I'm afraid Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character just didn't cut it. Um, and I'll go fast forward a bit here. There's There's a bike chase, excuse me, a road chase through the streets of Tangier. There's a whole cave scene in Syracuse. Some decent stunts, good action scenes. It's all there, but there was something about this film that was just missing compared to some of the others. There was a like I don't know, there was a fun with the other movies that this sort of seemed to lack somehow. Um, and I know it's dealing with an older Indiana Jones, and I guess they got that aspect correct, the generational thing, his frustrations. He's estranged from Marion Ravenwood, I should say. Um, but the ending now, I'm going to get to the ending. I just don't know about it, and it's a big spoiler. This style of Destiny thing, well, basically they all end up on the same plane, right? At least Indiana Jones and the main villain. And somehow, instead of getting back to 1939, because the villain intends to assassinate Hitler and change the course of the war, not for good, but to ensure that Germany wins. Okay, but instead of going back 30 years, they go back over 2,000 years, the 212 BC um, siege of Syracuse during the Punic Wars, I believe it was. Um, I just don't know about that. I think it was rushed. I think the premise of time travel might actually work. I must admit, initially I thought, okay, they better not do this throughout the whole film, it would be silly. Looking at it now, the fact it was rushed made it a bit silly. Um, I I mean, Indy and the others are impressed. Okay, they're back in the ancient world. Then Indy is shot, um, and he wants to stay there. He wants to stay in history. But the character of Helena, of course, she knocks him out because she fails to persuade him to come back. He's about to meet Archimedes. She knocks him out. He comes back to 1969, right? Then he's in his flat, and what happens? He reconciles with Marion, and there's a bit of a gushy moment, and that basically ends the film. And I don't know, for me, that last 20 minutes, it just something off about it. It just felt rushed. It felt too silly. I mean, the thing about Indiana Jones films, they're meant to be foremost entertaining. They're not meant to be too intellectual or too in depth. It's always been that way. But there was something about this that just felt a bit silly and a bit. The premise of time travel could have worked if they'd handled it a bit better. Um, but to me, it fell a little bit flat. And that was meant to be the swan song. That's the end of Indiana Jones. One of the most loved characters in film history. It just felt a bit off. I think they could have had a better ending. I'm not even criticizing the time travel aspect. The fact it was rushed, the whole gushy scene with him coming back in 1969 and the way he reconciles with Marion. I mean, you have to have an uplifting ending, but I don't know. They could have done it in a different way. I would definitely be up for the idea that people have suggested of a sort of Atlantis theme with an older short round being reconciled with Indy. I think that would have been wonderful. Now, maybe there were practical elements involved. Maybe, he wasn't interested in the project. He was working on everything everywhere all at once. I don't know. But um, all in all, it's definitely not the strongest film in the series. I'll buy it on DVD. And maybe I'll review this again. I always try to have an open mind. Maybe I'll think, actually, it's better than I've given it credit for. But I have to be honest, I was somewhat disappointed. I feel there were missed opportunities. I feel that the character of Helena just fell flat. She was irritating. She wasn't sassy. And it just, by irritating, I mean she was a petty thief, and it just, I don't know, she fell flat for me. No criticism of Harrison Ford. He was in top form. But really, his performance was one of the redeeming features. The action sequences were redeeming features, but plot was mediocre. Some of the supporting characters were okay. I don't know. I just felt it could have been better. I would even say Kingdom of the Crystal Skull might have an edge on it, and that's saying something. But I will get it when it comes out in DVD, and maybe I'll review it again. But as it stands, 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10 at a push, because the action sequences are impressive. That alone isn't really enough to salvage what I feel was a missed opportunity. Um, Yeah. It wasn't terrible. I'm not going to say some people have totally rubbished it, but this was one of the most expensive films ever made, and I feel it was a missed opportunity in light of that. Um, but I'm happy that British destinations were used were utilized. I thought the New York City sequence was superb, one of the best action sequences actually in the whole series. But the ending, just the whole way it was done, I feel could have been better to close what is one of the most beloved characters on in cinema history. 42 years on. And it should be said that neither Steven Spielberg nor George Lucas had anything to do with direction. They were executive producers. The director was James Mangold. I've seen Identity. It's a good movie, but very different movie. Otherwise, I don't know him that well. But it's definitely not the strongest film in the series, and I feel a missed opportunity. If you've watched it, let me know your thoughts. That is my review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.